mother says he was a normal, happy boy until he became obsessed with black metal music.
Rock and roll!
Sounds like Christian Rick.
Heavy metal music groups promote satanic worship.
They're anti-peace and anti-life.
Hi everybody, welcome back once again to the Metal Face Podcast, the podcast where each week we discuss 3 heavy metal albums. My name is Ben, and joining me as always I have Tom. Tom, say hello.
Hello, Ben.
And of course we have Josh. Josh, say hello.
Hello, Ben. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Josh.
Okay, so this is episode 4, which we are cautiously dubbing our black metal special.
Black metal. Black metal.
Expect a lot of that throughout, I imagine. So this week we'll be discussing Darkthrone's album A Blaze of a Northern Sky. We'll be covering Onirism's The Well of Stars and Dimmu Borgir's album Eonian.
Onion.
Eonian? Eonian.
Onion.
Rotted black metal onion from the black charred soil,
Putrid onions from Norway.
made into the foulest gravy.
Is this how we're going to start this?
I think it is.
Sorry, I'll edit that out. We're probably recording this on 2 high-quality mics anyway.
Yeah, we need the necro sound.
The worst quality possible. So we're dubbing this a black metal episode, but I think it's worth saying that this is not a comprehensive history of black metal, is it, Ben?
Absolutely not. My God, no.
Not at all.
First of all, it would be completely impossible to cover any genre in 3 albums in under an hour.
Yeah, so it's not a black metal 101 for people who don't know the genre.
No.
It's really, what would you say? It's our individual picks for black metal.
And I think we tried to pick 3 things, or realistically, coincidentally picked 3 things which cover 3 different areas of black metal, right?
Because it's quite a big genre at this point. Definitely diverted into lots of different subgenres.
I think for sure, like, it's really kind of the big surprise of, I guess, like, the late 2010s. Well, not the big surprise. One of the big surprises. That,
there was a really big surprise at the end of the 2010s.
yeah, the season finale. But I think it's really fascinating how a lot of non-black metal bands have started to take black metal inspiration from black metal bands. So
yeah, definitely.
I hate to do this, but Thy Art Is Murder, big deathcore band.
God.
They took a lot of.
What was the time on that one, Tom? What was the time on that reference?
we got 2 minutes in.
He's getting quicker.
Oh my God, he's learning.
Well, a few years ago, they put out an album, and they named Behemoth's The Satanist as one of the big influences. And you can hear the kind of evilness in the riffs. And I think it's interesting how black metal, which is this originally underground, evil, horrible-sounding, extreme genre, is kind of spread throughout the world. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I think Genocidal Humanoids, System of a Down's latest song, has got a very clear black metal section in it. They've fully gone for a black metal riff.
That's interesting. I think, I wonder if we'll ever see it expanding beyond
the mainstream.
It might be a while.
But you've got people like Poppy who are doing that kind of weird, creepy,
That's true.
metal-y poppy stuff.
Poppy's an interesting one.
Yeah, and to be fair as well, there's a lot of synthwave bands out there that are literally black metal artists who have moved into synth music.
Yeah.
There's some pretty clear influence there as well.
So I think maybe we should pull back a bit here and explain what the fuck we're talking about for the uninitiated. So I think a sort of a bastardized history of black metal very quickly would be that in the sort of late 80s, where you have thrash and death sort of coming to the fore, there's these bands like Venom and Bathory who are taking metal to sort of much more occult, sort of satanic kind of places. At this point in time, you have death metal becoming technical, well-produced, and black metal in the 90s was sort of a reaction against that. What would you call it? It's like
commercialization in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, in a way, commercialization. It's a sort of it's making it sound acceptable. It's very, very well polished kind of thing. Black metal's sort of a reaction against it.
That was my expectation going into this episode, was lots of very lo-fi, really dark, just the most satanic metal effectively that you could think of, kind of what the mainstream expects metal to be, but actually even worse in a way, because it's the low production, grinding basically.
Yeah.
But that's not all of black metal by a long shot.
Yeah, not at all. And it's one of the most notorious genres of metal because of its its affiliation with a series of sort of murders and arsons in Norway in the 90s.
The crimes of black metal.
Exactly, yeah. That's something to address in a future episode, I think, because most people are familiar with the history to some extent anyway. But I think what we're really here to talk about is the sound of the music. I suppose what our previous exposure to black metal has been. I remember last year, Ben, you asked me if I could make you a playlist of black metal. So I put one together for you.
Please spoon-feed me black metal.
And it had your sort of Darkthrone, Bloodfeel, Immortal, a couple of other things as well. And yeah, but what's your sort of, what has been your exposure to black metal over the years?
Yeah, I'll be honest. My expectation, like I said, was just to be really like classic Norwegian black metal. That was really what I thought we were going to get this week. And as we get into the bands, obviously we'll realise that isn't what we had. I think, just as like a wider point, I don't pay a huge amount of attention to like genre labels. But then maybe that's not true, because I think when someone tells me something is black metal, I have an immediate assumption of what it's going to sound like. Yeah, I think I'd say that my starting point for black metal was Behemoth, really. Yeah. I got really into Behemoth, and I think they've got that sort of like well-produced, more like symphonic, atmospheric kind of vibe that's more popular these days. And that was kind of my entry point. And then, last year I asked you to sort of put together a playlist of something that was a bit darker. And you said you delivered. It was good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a good playlist.
And then I think this episode really then just showed me like how much fucking music there is out there. Like, it's just...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Black metal especially, I think more than any other genre, there's just so much in it. And
it's, I think, more so than thrash, where it's like thrash describes a very like particular type of playing. Of course. And it is broad, and it does have lots of sort of differences in it. But black metal is, at this point, like a huge umbrella term, which can cover everything from like something very symphonic and kind of, extremely palatable to something that's very sort of punk and rock and roll and savage, all the way to stuff that's extremely sort of heavy and sort of bordering on death metal sometimes.
I think that's an interesting point, because like when we talk about genres, it's kind of like, when do you drop the black metal part of the genre? We have symphonic black metal, which I feel is so far away from traditional black metal that you might as well just give it a new name, And
I think the thing that really crucially defined black metal is non-stop like machine gun speed blast beat, with a sort of fast tremolo picking and normally very high-pitched, drawn-out sort of screeched vocals.
I never liked classic black metal, really. I listened to bands like Emperor. I liked Emperor.
Oh, yeah.
But, but other things like Immortal or Mayhem never really grabbed me. And it was only kind of more recently when listening to bands kind of on the periphery, like you say, like the symphonic black metal. So Aneurysm, who I've kind of made everyone listen to this week, are very much at the edge of the genre. But also you've got things like so Soul Dusk are a kind of she's a lady from Australia, and she does a black metal / acoustic neo-folk kind of thing. Those are the kind of the ways I got into it. And even when you look
can we just throw out pretty niche?
No, I take your point. To be fair, I think having been in listened to metal since a teenager and then in a folk band, maybe I'm in a bit of a good
don't get me wrong, I love that variation in the genre, and how there are just so many influences and so much stuff that comes into it. Like, it's a great thing.
And I think black metal particularly is something that can absorb all those other genres very well. It's like you get black metal bands that have a lot of folk sounds in there. You have like black thrash bands. You have blackened death metal like Behemoth. You sort of, any given genre can sort of be put through the black metal lens and turned into something evil.
But that's kind of interesting though, isn't it? It's kind of this inversion of what it was, because black metal started out as like this rejection of the mainstream genres, didn't it? Like, people were like, I don't want to be in this death metal scene because it's too commercial. Like, imagine saying that, like,
Yeah.
And now
and those purists still exist, right? Like, there's
absolutely.
The genre's changed so much, and there are people who will be like, this isn't black metal, and it's difficult because different things become more and less popular. Like we've said before, that original music is still there. You can still enjoy it. So I think that's kind of a silly position to take. But,
being such an extreme genre, it attracts extreme people.
Oh,
they have
sure.
extreme points of view. And that's pretty well documented in the history of black metal.
I think that's all we'll say on that.
Have you guys ever heard of Dungeon Synth?
No, I haven't.
So Dungeon Synth is, as one of my old colleagues described it, RuneScape music. It's got this really cool... It's like this kind of like, obviously like lo-fi, synthy, fantasy theme music. But it's got this big crossover with atmospheric black metal. Like,
that's interesting.
Like something like, I think like Damn Chill of Life or something, where you've got this kind of sad sounding synth and like this dark ambient kind of vibe. And I just think it's interesting how we're seeing this evolution again kind of back towards more mainstream in a way. Like, it's quite accessible. It's just weird.
Honestly, let's say really quickly, we're on episode 4 of this, and my mind's already blown just how much music there actually is out there.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing, like, obviously everyone likes listening to music, but there is definitely something else to sort of going, like, I'm going to go explore, you know? And there is so much out there. And I think, particularly black metal is something that started as this very sort of underground, strange, different sort of form of music, and has now absorbed so many other things and kind of come back to the mainstream in a way for metal. Exercises in Futility by Migler was voted 2nd or 3rd album of the decade on Banger TV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've been into black metal in general for years now, but last year particularly I got kind of absorbed by the genre and how much there was going on there, and particularly this feeling that you could have incredibly heavy music that was also full of atmosphere and kind of spiritual as well.
So you're positioning yourself as the black metal expert. So any criticism directed Tom's way.
Full on expert. I know exactly what I'm talking about.
Master's degree in black metal studies.
I'm glad you've positioned yourself so readily to receive criticism. I would say, you obviously got more experience in the genre than I have. This week I've basically been in entirely into listening to black metal. There's genuinely, I love my Spotify, and they've got really good playlists on there. Black Metal Essentials. There's a lot of good tracks on there. It got me really into Rotting Christ this week. Been listening to a lot of Rotting Christ.
Nice.
Really enjoyable.
I actually, I've not really listened to Rotting Christ. I wasn't aware they were a black metal band, so I will check them out.
Well, Spotify says they are, and I go by what Spotify says. I'd say my only other band I'd like to point out is Cradle of Filth, because they're kind of like a guilty pleasure of mine.
Nah, mate.
I feel like
they're really all right.
Okay, I'm glad I can be accepted.
You are forgiven for your sin.
I feel like they are a massive cultural punching bag.
Your sin is encouraged by black metal.
But it's a good genre. A lot going on.
Definitely. And in that spirit, I think let's talk about our first album this week, Darkthrone's "Ablaze in the Northern Sky." So to talk about Darkthrone, we've got to talk about black metal. Building on the sound of the first wave of black metal in the 80s, sort of proto-black metal, bands like Venom and Bathory that I mentioned earlier. The second wave reacted against the sort of overproduced death metal of the time, whilst also drawing on it, to create something that they hoped would be completely fucking unlistenable and raw, and going back to that first wave sound. Thus, black metal, as we know it, was born. And we're talking high, shrieking vocals, machine gun drums, tremolo picking, and a strong dose of sort of lo-fi, satanic and Norse imagery. And Ablaze in the Northern Sky is sort of a cornerstone of the genre. It's Darkthrone's second album, and it's their first black metal release. Their first album was actually a death metal release, interestingly enough. It's the first of what people what people sometimes call I don't know which people. Sometimes called the unholy the unholy trinity that includes Under a Funeral Moon and Transylvanian Hunger, which sort of mirror this sound a little bit. They kept going with it for those two records. In my mind, though, this one, the first one, is definitely the sort of the most savage and the most genre-defining, even though I think Transylvanian Hunger is kind of probably remembered a bit more. I first heard it when I was about 16, and I loved it then, and I love it now. I think it has what I consider to be a kind of like a Sabbath quality, which I think some bands have, where it's not so much that they've written a bunch of amazing songs and catchy sort of things that you're going to remember. It's more that they've created a sound that really changed the genre. Obviously, a lot of bands were doing it at this time, but I feel like this album is just an absolute crucial part of what became the genre that we call black metal today. And as I was saying, Ben, I made you a playlist of black metal last year, so I want to know, what do you think of Ablaze in the Northern Sky?
Short and sweet. I really liked it.
Yeah, man.
Done. No, it's I'd listened to the album through once, I think last year, and I didn't really understand the historical context of black metal or anything. I'm not saying you need that, but it definitely helps to understand where they were coming from and kind of the space they were working in at the time.
It's like, why would they do this?
A little bit, yeah, but that kind of helps my enjoyment of it, because you kind of understand the influences that they've taken. Because when you listen to an album from 1990 today, you don't have that context, and I think having that context really helped me. And you said about like the Sabbath comparison. I think that's really, really appropriate because I am a big Black Sabbath fan and I like a lot of the stuff that came out of it. Like, that stoner doom kind of like stuff that came out of Sabbath. And I'm not such a big fan of black metal day to day. So I think maybe that's why I never quite made my way back to listening to Darkthrone.
Yeah.
But no, I really enjoyed it. It's really like pure music. It's just the other albums we're going to talk about today are really good comparisons because they've leaned so much more on sort of like production quality and symphonic elements. Whereas I feel like it's an active rejection of those things in this album. But it's great. I really liked it. I'm curious to know what you thought, Josh, because I feel like maybe not so much.
I feel like there might be a dissenting voice here. Mm-hmm. No more blazes of the northern sky for Josh.
Northern sky will be not on fire.
No.
Josh shows up to the burning church with a fire extinguisher. Go on then, Josh.
So
here we go.
Whenever
you do the long so,
I enjoyed the kind of concept of it, and I think it's a really, it's obviously a classic album, isn't it? And it's very influential, and it really set the stage for a lot of music that I do really like. But I cannot tell a lie and say that I really liked this album. I found a lot of the elements in it, which were meant to be like threatening and extreme, quite funny.
Yeah.
So some of the spoken word sections where he's kind of got the goblin voice going, and I don't mean crypt voice when he's singing. I mean the goblin, like where it's all kind of nasal and like. I did not find those I feel like a lot of the things that were anti-atmospheric kind of threw me out of the atmosphere.
Interesting.
And I also I totally acknowledge that I'm just coming from the wrong point of view from this. Definitely, I enjoyed the guitar tone and how it sounded. The overall atmosphere was in general pretty cool, but it didn't grab me like the other ones. Part of it was, if you watch Lord of the Rings now again, it feels a bit generic because, goblins and dwarves and elves, it all feels very, Dungeons and Dragons.
It's been done over and over again, yeah.
Yeah, but the reason it feels generic is because they invented it, right?
Because it was so influential.
Yeah. So it's really a victim of its own success here.
Yeah.
And I'm being a very ignorant person, but it didn't really do it for me.
Now, see, it's interesting you say that, because I think that those sort of goblin-esque moments, and let's just define our terms a little bit here. The crypt voice is like a style of singing, which he doesn't actually really do in this album at all, where it's kind of, you're not really singing so much as being like, Planet of the Reptile,
I knew you were going to use that example as well.
That's because I love that song. This goblin voice that you're referring to is more the kind of the slightly weird atmospheric spoken word bits where he's sort of muttering over the start and ends of parts of the song, right? Yeah.
That is what I'm referring to.
Now see, I don't find that threatening or scary or atmospheric. I find it weird. And there's something about this album where, it's weird. It's who would make an album like this? Why would they do this, But that's why for me, that's why I like it so much, because it's such a unique piece of work in that you can find other stuff that's like it because there's so many imitators. But there's something really pure about it. In my mind, it's it's the platonic ideal of a black metal album. And everything else is a derivative of it. I'm aware, by the way, for anyone listening, that there are other amazing influential albums that we're not probably even going to get around to talking about on this episode. And so, yeah, I take your point that it sounds pretty fucking weird, but for me, that's part of why I like it.
I think it comes down to, again, the black metal brainworm, like we were talking about before, with the metalcore brainworm. Maybe it's just some people really love this stuff and some people don't. And I'm in the unfortunate category of liking breakdowns and disliking crypt voice.
I think if this had hit me maybe a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have got it.
Yeah.
But Tom has successfully put that worm into my brain. And Tom, you're saying it's being a really influential album on the genre. I think that's completely true in terms of there's a lot of different ideas in every song. I feel like some albums, they get a good idea and then they do that idea in minor variations for every song. But there was quite a lot of variety, I think, on the album. It didn't really feel like it got samey. And the songs are quite long, so you get a lot of different ideas in each song.
I think what I really like is there's some really unusual things thrown in there. So you've got your typical sort of black metal stuff, as I say, fast tremolo picking, shrieking vocals and things like that. But you've also got moments where it sort of turns into doom with some very slow, heavy riffs. You've got sort of weird spoken word bits over the top of the music. You've got this sort of stompy, almost D-beat. You know what D-beat is?
Explain it for the audience. Obviously, I know, but
it's a style of drumming in sort of extreme punk and grindcore, where they say that the the beat sounds like somebody going, big banana bread, big banana bread, big banana bread. So it's the whole song is going like that. It's got some of those sort of moments in there as well. If you're interested in that, you should check out Disclose. Type in Disclose D-Beat Raw Punk on YouTube. You'll get it. Terror in the Nuclear Age, something like that anyway. Good album. So it's got all that sort of stuff in there. But it's also got the kind of like bafflingly effective acoustic guitar moment at the end of In the Shadow of the Horns. Where it's like, it's suddenly... Well, okay, you go. Tell me what you think.
I love that song. That was my favourite song on the album, but I would have just literally cut that acoustic guitar track out at the end. Weirdly, it didn't I didn't enjoy that. I was just like, I would have preferred without that. Like, I don't know why. Maybe if I listen to it again, I'll change my mind. But
it's so weird because it suddenly like splits the music, like separating oil from water. You've got this, you're actually listening to the acoustic guitar, and you suddenly become aware of how savage and like rattling and lo-fi and strange the rest of the music is.
Yeah, when I was listening to Kafarian Life Code,
I love that song.
I feel like that song was like a 10-minute live jam session almost. Like, it was obviously really clearly well put together, but it was so like chaotic and just like changing. It felt like a jam session almost. And Darkthrone don't play live, right? Like, they haven't played live since the 90s or something.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe in the 2010s was when they were... 2000s was when they were last playing live.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's a shame. I'd like to see them.
Oh, yeah. Fucking hell, me too.
No, it does, in a way, have a bit of a kind of improvisational feel, doesn't it? Not necessarily in how it's put together, because, you know, it's obviously well constructed, but in the sense of, like, it's like, oh, let's try this new thing. Yeah. And it's cool in that sense.
There's some bits where it breaks into almost, like, directly, like, Black Sabbath-sounding moments as well.
It does a very classic feel.
Yeah, where the riffs suddenly just start, like, picking up the pace and like bouncing a little bit, sort of escalating.
That's the word I picked out. There were some real bouncy guitarists which I did not expect.
Weird, right? Paragon Belial is a particularly good example of that, where they just use all sorts of weird things in like one song.
Yeah, and that started to remind me of Satyricon King.
Oh, great song.
Because that's very like bouncy and very like, I don't know if black and roll is the right word, but it suddenly has that more like rhythm-led sort of feel to it, rather than like Kafarian Life Code, which is that like pure chaos feel to it. And I think maybe that's the point I was trying to make earlier, in terms of there's a lot of different ideas in this, and you can see so many things splintering out of it, that's, you know, why I would also pick this out as like such an influential album.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it covers all the areas of black metal. It's got your atmospheric moments, it's got your full-on black and roll kind of stuff, and it's got your straight-up sort of rolling, grinding black metal. Any favourite tracks, Ben?
In the Shadow of the Horns and Paragon Belial, two I picked out. I really liked Kafarian Life Code as well. Towards the end of the album, I do feel like it trailed off a little bit.
Funnily enough, A Blaze in the Northern Sky is actually not the best song on the album. Really.
No, I didn't really find that very memorable at all.
Yeah. What about you, Josh? Did anything stand out for you, or was it all just...
It blended into one for me a little bit. I think his guitar tone is quite impressive. There was no real one standout. Yeah, so the really cool stages. So in the Shadow of the Horns, I think there were a couple where I had that quite like, if I remember correctly, I just had the bouncy, quite like classic feel, which I think was a cool vibe. But to be honest with you, I kind of found it hard to pick a single one, because a lot of it was just kind of like the oppressive feel.
And I think, like, you know, that's really okay, because I think one thing that this album does that people never expect it to do, can be kind of weirdly relaxing to listen to. It's sort of hypnotic in its kind of strange, repetitious nature, super lo-fi effect. It kind of gets into your head, and I like listening to it when I'm hungover, because it sort of reflects how I feel. And on favourite songs, Shadow of the Horns is one of my favourite songs, I would say, of all time. So it's for me, it's a fucking 10 out of 10 album.
Nice.
Ooh, yeah.
Just one more thing I'd just like to mention before we move on. The artwork for this album is legendary.
It's fucking
amazing,
it's so brilliant. I love it.
It's so funny.
It just fits perfectly, doesn't it? There is never a more perfect album artwork. I love it.
And I'll tell you what it is. Like, all you need to do to create something like that, right? If anyone, little guide to creating black metal artwork here. Get your image, put it in grayscale, so put it in black and white, and then just up the contrast all the way, and you'll have a black metal album cover.
Done.
And I mean, that's black metal, isn't it? It's super lo-fi, it's black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's great, and I love it.
There you go.
Absolutely. So moving from lo-fi origins of the genre to hi-fi or maybe mid-fi, maybe not cutting edge, but definitely the evolution of the genre, we've now got The Well of Stars by Aneurysm. So, Aneurysm is a one-man black metal project by, and apologies, Monsieur Guibert, by Antoine Guibert, started in 2014. All of his lyrics focus on his own lucid dreams, and this gives it quite kind of a psychedelic and whimsical feel to the music, which is an unusual feeling of black metal. There's a lot of kind of cosmic imagery, like nebulas and stars in the lyrics. So Onirism is a small project, but has really good production values and sounds really good. And I think this really shows what a motivated soul musician can do. And this is kind of getting a bit beyond just Onirism, but I think in black metal it's very interesting in the scene. There's all these multi-instrumentalists who have lots of kind of solo projects, which you don't necessarily see in thrash, for example.
No, that's true.
You do see in other parts of metal, like Gent and prog and the like, which is kind of interesting. And I really love the idea in black metal in particular of seeing a single musician working away, creating this expansive sort of fantasy world, which is something that happens a lot in metal. You know, with the origins of the genre having this kind of weird tie to like Dungeons and Dragons and things, creating this fantasy world and then expressing it through music. I find that so cool. And I think that's probably why these kinds of projects really grab me.
Yeah, but I was going to say, this feels like a bit of a theme with your choices, Josh. You like the wider fantasy setting for your metal. I think that's really interesting.
I mean, it's interesting because one of my favourite bands is Code in Cambria, and they've got this whole fantasy world as well. You can buy their comics and things. It is definitely, you're right, Ben, something I really think is cool. But it's because I'm a giant nerd.
Aren't we all?
I guess I'm interested to hear, what do you guys think of this? Because as you have pointed out pre-show, this is, the first track is not black metal.
I feel like I spent most of this album not listening to black metal.
Yeah, I felt like I was listening to like the Skyrim theme tune for a lot of this. Like I felt like I was in a fantasy game.
It reminded me of the Kung Fu Panda soundtrack written by Hans Zimmer.
Really?
Which is a great soundtrack, and that's definitely not a criticism. It wasn't quite what I was expecting when we decided to do a black metal episode. Here's the thing. At this point, I feel like I've heard most variations of the genre. I don't know, maybe even all of them.
Look at this guy.
And but it's still really fun to go back and dive into some of them. And I gotta say, I enjoyed this. As we were saying just now, I feel like most of it kind of isn't even black metal, because a lot of it's like soundtrack sort of stuff. It starts out with this sort of really beautiful kind of soundscape, goes on for like 6-7 minutes or whatever. Second track, you get that first like guitar tone. You're sort of like reminded that you're still listening to like metal, and it goes into this really kind of spun out epic feeling music that's kind of, it's almost upbeat in moments, and it doesn't have that kind of lo-fi washed out hardcore savage punk thing.
Yeah, it's very upbeat, right?
It feels good to listen to. I think what it does have that Darkthrone has is that hypnotic energy.
Yeah, it's definitely very upbeat. That was something that really surprised me about it. Is I was expecting like our black metal episode to be very not depressing, not like making you sad, but more on that like nihilistic and just dark wavelength. And there is a bit of that here. And I think one of my favorite things about this album is that contrast where you have first 4 tracks are part 1 through part 4. And it's like part 1 is very soundscapey, very uplifting. And then there's more sort of black metal influence in the second track. And then it kind of repeats on 3 and 4. But it's that contrast that I actually really enjoyed. And going from sort of feeling like, we've talked about music before, putting you in a place. I felt like I could be sort of climbing a mountain, listening to this with like the really high fantasy stuff, and then something bad happens and it gets all dark again.
It sort of reminded me of like you ever listen to Borknagar?
No.
Borknagar?
Stop saying Bork.
Raised Bork ribs.
Bork.
Interesting that you say that those sort of elements kind of contrasted. Something like Darkthrone, the acoustic guitar and the like necro sound contrast a lot. Like I said, I actually feel like something I really liked about this album was that the orchestral parts and the black metal parts almost complement each other. It's not like, here's one thing we can do and here's another thing we can do.
Oh, don't get me wrong. It's not a clash.
It flows into one.
Yeah, it's not a clash. It is. It's well contrasted, because you can have songs where you're like, wait a minute, these elements just don't fit together. Yeah, there's a contrast, but it's not good. But this was, it made total sense. Like it flowed. I mean, like I said, the album's in sort of part 1 to part 4, and I never noticed when the tracks transitioned. I just basically put it on and listened to it all the way through, and was like, oh my god, it's been on for like 50 minutes. I didn't even realize. Like.
For real, yeah. It's. I think it's really impressive how he manages to marry up these two totally different styles into this cohesive kind of soundscapey, atmospheric-y, vibration-y world.
I would question whether they even are that different in a way. I think there is something about black metal that kind of appeals to something a little bit more classical. It's sort of it's like large scale dramatic music, and I think the electric guitar is sort of expressing something that like it would take a whole orchestra to do in the past,
I do think it's interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of black metal, more recently in particular, is very orchestrated as well. I think we'll find that as well when we talk about Dimmu Borgir later.
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, I think talking about Darkthrone and then talking about Onirism, they are so different. There's some elements there, right? Like a few ingredients, but my God, like the end result is so different.
And you can see it even in the album artwork of Darkthrone's album being like a sort of a very high contrast, washed out sort of photo, and then Onirism being this sort of beautifully like digitally painted, like sparkling tree.
yeah. And that's where I think, I really don't want to bang on about the genre thing, but it is just like, I start to question, like, are we even in the same zone here? There are elements, but I mean...
I think that's really a strength of black metal, though. This is how widely it's kind of spread its wings, its tendrils, its
definitely.
roots.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I really appreciated actually listening to this, because it sort of opened my eyes to a lot of music like Aneurysm that's out there. It's not an area I'd really got into before. After listening to Aneurysm, I listened to Can Bard, and I think they're very similar. Very similar. It could have been the same artist for listening to it. Yeah, really, really also enjoyable. Again, like brilliant soundscapey sort of bits. Pretty decent black metal in there as well.
Yeah, and there's even black metal bands that have like clean vocals as well, which sort of is like removing another element and somehow still staying black metal. I think black metal absorbs more influences than, say, thrash or grindcore, where there's some essential elements where, like, you listen to Metallica, you listen to Municipal Waste, you listen to Vector, you listen to Evil, they're all still very clearly thrash.
Yeah,
and there's
there's
something about them where, like, they could all still play a fucking show together, Whereas I wouldn't expect to see Darkthrone and Onirism playing together, for example. I mean, maybe they could. In fact, I'm sure they probably could.
No, I'm sure they could, but it wouldn't be like...
They're not as tightly related somehow.
No.
So, something I was thinking about this week, because we were having a conversation earlier on about introducing sort of non-metal fans to the genre. Do you think you'd have better success starting with Darkthrone or Onirism? Because I feel like Onirism's more niche and Darkthrone is more of a consistent idea.
That's a good point,
that is a good point. I feel like, because in a way, it's like, if you get Darkthrone, and I remember a good friend of mine who I showed Darkthrone, it was my birthday a few years ago, and I was like, look, it's my birthday. We can listen to what I want to listen to. And so we listened to A Blaze in the Northern Sky, and after about half an hour, he was like, man, this is actually like really chill. I'm really into this. It's kind of endless stomping, grinding, necro soundy sort of stuff. Whereas I feel like Onirism might be a tougher sell in some ways.
I think it's interesting that, because it's a less, I guess, pure example of the genre, isn't it? So you could listen to Onirism and really like the, part 1 and part 3, where it's all orchestral and stuff, and just listen to those and miss out on all the black metal.
So maybe, so maybe Darkthrone is better to start with, because at least it's consistently horrible throughout. Whereas when people listen to Onirism, they'll be like, "Why couldn't you have just stayed with the beginning bit?"
I genuinely, I'm sure I know so many people who would say exactly that.
They'd say I liked the like drums and the like orchestra or whatever, but I didn't like the screaming.
Yeah, why did he have to start doing the screaming bit? I didn't like that bit.
Well, did you guys have any standout tracks on this album? And let's try and choose the black metal tracks.
Part 1 and part 3.
Or 2 of them.
Well,
it's 3 out of 5, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you have to take this this album as a whole. It's it's
for sure.
It's in parts. I think it's a consistent piece throughout. But obviously, part 2 and 4 being the more black metal parts, and then the final track. I enjoyed them more, but it's an entire package. I couldn't really break it apart like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really liked it, actually. I really enjoyed it. And it's for me, it didn't really stand out, because I feel like I've heard lots of things like it before, and I feel like I will continue listening to things like it in the future. But I really liked the last track in particular. I think one thing I found was, I think especially in black metal, where all the songs have the same name and they're like part 1, part 2, part 3, blah, blah, blah. I think sometimes that really works. With Migla, it really works, because the lyrics are a bit more kind of legible and you can pick the songs apart a little bit. I found that these sort of blended a little bit, and I would have liked something that identified them as different songs a little bit more.
Yeah, no, for me, similarly, yes, take it as a whole. Parts 2 and 4 are my favourite, but yeah, it's hard to break it apart.
Yeah. but a good album. I'm glad we checked it out.
Good choice, Josh.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
You finally like Musica, bro.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, actually, well, you say that, but we all fucking love Dexteo.
Yes, true.
Yeah,
I'm
Mr.
being
Hard
very,
Done By. Yeah. Always picking
I'm bitter about episode 1, where it's just bullying.
I think, if anything, Xteo got the most positive reaction out of any of us in all the episodes we've recorded, right?
True. No, I will concede
We
that.
all listened to it and we're like, whoa! Whoa!
Yeah, that's fair. We all wanted to go join the Carthaginian army and sack Rome.
Before we do that, I think we need to talk about our third album this week, Eonian by Dimmu Borgir. So my choice this week is Eonian by Norwegian symphonic black metal giants Dimmu Borgir. It's their 10th studio album and came out in 2018, actually, so pretty recent.
Damn.
Dimmu Borgir, I think, are really at the heart of a symphonic black metal wave, which seems to have been going around in the last sort of 10, 20 years or so.
Yeah.
And I think with each album, they've leaned more and more into those symphonic elements.
Yeah.
And with that, I mean, they've generated a huge amount of success.
They're fucking huge.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I've no doubt that black metal purists will turn their noses up at Dimmu Borgir.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, I think to be fair, it is a massive transformation compared to Darkthrone versus Dimmu Borgir, hugely different.
Worlds apart, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think there's a lot to talk about here. So I'm interested to hear what you guys thought.
I loved this album. I thought it was amazing. I'll gush about this even worse than
Oh, really?
Xteo.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought it was so good. It did a lot of things really well.
Yeah.
Like, when I was younger, I used to be a huge fan of Nightwish. And as my taste has gotten a bit heavier, I guess I stopped listening to them because they haven't, like, their music sounds like maybe a little bit too poppy.
It's quite
A
Disney.
bit too... Yeah. Whereas I feel like Dimmu Borgir are like Nightwish, but like
meth.
kind of evil.
Definitely, yeah. That's my kind of reaction to this album. Is that it's very much on that edge, becoming too light, but it's still just dark enough.
Right
to-
on the edge,
yeah,
though.
yeah. So,
It's
Josh,
right there.
what was your previous experience with Dimmu Borgir?
I have never listened to Dimmu Borgir before in my life.
Really?
My entire exposure to Dimmu Borgir was on the YouTube video of the Ailstorm song Death Throws the Terror Squid in the second half, and it gets all kind of like black metal.
Right.
Someone said, they went on Dimmu Borgir in the second half. And I was like, well, that was the worst part of the song, so I'm not going to listen to Dimmu
Oh,
Borgir.
what the fuck are you talking about? I love that bit, man.
And can we just say,
I was blown away by that. And, I haven't mentioned it yet, but Ailstorm, one of my favourite bands. Maybe not the last two albums, but we're going to talk about them at some point.
so
For another day, perhaps.
So then I'll just, that's not a lot of exposure to Dimmu Borgir for Josh. Tom, what about you? What did you think and previous experience with Dimmu Borgir?
So obviously I'm familiar with Dimmu Borgir. The name's kicked around all the fucking time in the scene. I think people love Dimmu Borgir. Like you go to any given metal festival and there are people like dressed like the members of Dimmu Borgir.
Yeah.
You get these black metal guys who they go for the full on look and stuff. So I had that level of exposure where I was like, oh okay, they're kind of one of those bands a little bit. Very strong gimmick, some songs that I kind of know. Definitely the song Gateways I really, really liked.
Yeah.
I liked it then, I like it now. It has these guest vocals from a woman called Agnete Maria Forfang Kjølsrud.
Okay.
Who's a Norwegian rock singer. She's featured on that album and she's featured on Campfire's album Ophidians. I think if you're into black metal and you like Dimmu Borgir, you should check out Campfire as well. They're much heavier and darker, but definitely there's a similar vibe, I think.
Yeah, in terms of the heaviness, I do think that this album, much like Onerism, I was surprised at how sort of uplifting it was.
Yeah.
I also didn't have a huge amount of experience with Dimmu Borgir. Like Tom, I've heard a couple of songs that I know they're huge. I know people really love them.
Yeah.
And I kind of picked this album as a reason to finally force myself to listen to an album all the way through. And I got to say, I don't regret the choice. It was really good.
I wanted to ask you, Ben, about what led you to picking this album, because I knew that you were sort of into black metal in terms of kind of getting into it. I like to think that I forced your hand in that respect.
And I feel like the reason you've asked this question is because you already know the answer. So my original choice, I was actually going to pick a Satyricon album. But I kind of wanted to do something that was a bit more like really popular at the moment and sort of represented like what the genre is in the mainstream, in quotes. And I sort of said, oh yeah, Dimmu Borgir, like I've kind of heard of them. And then you told me to listen to the song Interdimensional Summit. And once I listened to that, I knew I had to pick this album.
Now that's the thing. We should just fucking talk about that song Interdimensional Summit, because I like this album. I think it's cool. But Interdimensional Summit, I think I heard it in like September last year, and it was in my, it was like one of the top 3 songs of last year. That's how obsessed with it I was.
That's impressive. It made its way all the way there in the last 3 months of a year.
Literally, yeah.
Really kind of captures all the best bits of the album, doesn't it? It's really maximalist. It's like everything at once.
Yeah, so I found, again, calling back to Darkthrone, I feel like there were a lot of different ideas there, which could all splinter off in different directions.
Yeah.
Whereas, this is going to sound like a criticism, but it's honestly not. This album, I feel like they have sort of one idea, which is this operatic synth black metal thing, and they do it again and again and again, and every track is great, but there's not a great deal of, I mean, obviously there's variation in terms of like the musical composition and stuff, but it almost a little bit samey. But Interdimensional Summit is the best example of that.
Yeah. I would have liked to have heard them taking a bit more of a gamble with some of the compositions.
That's what I mean, yeah.
But I feel like, as you say, Interdimensional Summit is kind of like, it's the pinnacle of what they can do with this sound. Like, that song, it starts really strong with the kind of like really epic like string instruments. It just goes straight into it. The verse like just has so much pace to it. The chorus is just this high soaring thing. It's got that kind of bridge where it all like the whole song just like stops, and then kind of there's that kind of like breathing in moment, and then it just goes whoomph into the second half and finishes off the song, and it's fucking brilliant.
No, it is an amazing song, and I think it's really interesting how I felt like in the second half of the song, the strings actually, like the string sort of section, took the lead over the guitars almost.
Yeah,
like, it became almost more like an orchestra performance than it did a black metal song.
And that's the thing, I think, whereas Onerism is kind of mixing these two sounds, like you've got like the orchestral stuff, and then it moves into the sort of black metal stuff. This is more like, this is blending both of them at once. You're hearing both things at once, and what's interesting is that I was listening to this, and at points I was like, is there even anyone playing guitar in this song?
Yeah.
It's so low down in the mix, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like vocals, string instruments, guitar, drums kind of thing.
It is interesting how it's kind of, like you say, almost not even rock music.
Yeah.
Let alone metal music. So it's just so synthy and orchestral, and they've got like a real choir. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But
they've toured with an orchestra before.
Yeah.
Wow. I honestly, I knew nothing about Dimmu Borgir, but now, like, the first chance I have to see them live, I'm going to buy tickets.
Bloodstock,
like,
2021, Josh. Buy the ticket.
2021, yeah.
All right, happening. I was just so blown away. Like, it really, like, it reminds me of in like songs, in Alan Nathak songs, like like say like The Age of Starlight Ends or something, where it's got a big soaring chorus. It's like that, but like whole songs worth of it, and I just thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
Yeah.
It's like power black metal.
It is
so good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was really excited by it. I was just so hyped. Interdimensional Summit's great, and then the song after Etheric also just really, I think, nails all those different things together in a really good way.
Absolutely.
And I'll stop now.
We don't want to say anything too positive on this show.
One thing that I really liked about it, and one of the reasons I got so hooked on that song, is that it kind of epitomizes something that I really like about black metal, where it's like, it's willing to delve into more spiritual stuff. Like, there's obviously spiritual elements in all sorts of music, all sorts of metal, but I definitely felt when I got into black metal that it was touching on spiritual and philosophical ideas. And I love the chorus in Interdimensional Summit, where it says, "To the trained eye, there are no coincidences. The more you see, the less it makes sense." And it's like, I spent a lot of time last year during the lockdown cycling around the woods near my parents' house and listening to black metal. And definitely, I feel like a lot of those spiritual ideas were at the forefront of my mind during that period of time. And this was one of the songs, and black metal was one of the genres that really captured that kind of feeling of having some sort of breakthrough in, let's be real, some pretty shit year.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how uplifting and empowering it feels. For a genre of music which has a section called suicidal depressive black metal. It's kind of amazing that it's got this in it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So for me, the biggest comparison was Winter Sun, and I don't know if you guys have listened to Winter Sun.
I actually haven't listened to Winter Sun.
You recommended a track before the show. I had a listen, and I definitely see the comparison. 100%.
Sons of Winter and Stars.
Yeah, I can definitely see the comparison. I feel like only ever so slightly they are leaning more towards that Nightwish side of things, Winter Sun.
Yeah.
But it was really good as well. And I think, if you like Dimmu Borgir, if you like this album in particular, you'd also like that Winter Sun.
Definitely. I think you can go more or less melodic. You can go a lot of different directions from Dimmu Borgir. I could understand somebody getting into black metal using this as a kind of gateway to it.
Yeah.
I think, Josh, you'd also really like Borknagar. I don't know how to say that name properly. And you should check out Campfire as well.
Campfire. Okay. I'll have to do that, because I was really impressed by this. I was really grabbed.
I feel like this is more epic than any of those bands, though, to be honest. This is like a real... Okay. This is epic as fuck, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. They've really hit that, and they've really leaned into it. And they're committed to what it is, and I think they've nailed it, really. I can't imagine it feeling more epic than this without just blowing my heart out of my chest or something.
There is one way it could be improved, I think.
Oh, yeah.
If it was actually about a fantasy world that the band had created, and it was a concept album describing a fantasy war.
That's what's missing.
Josh, are you aware that all of Immortal's songs are based on a fantasy world that they created?
Immortal are really
Somehow I feel like he's still not going to listen to Immortal.
I really want to like Immortal, I just don't.
Josh, listen to Mighty Raven Dark.
Okay.
That's a brilliant song.
I know Immortal, I love the concept, I've never been grabbed by them, but I'll check it out.
Should we move back?
Let's bring it back to Dimmu Borgir.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've now recommending Immortal songs instead of talking about Dimmu Borgir.
As much as we're all kind of gushing about this album, I liked it, but I really wasn't that blown away by it.
Oh, really?
I think I could definitely see myself coming back to it and listening to it, but I don't think it's going to be like a favourite for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think Interdimensional Summit, I really like that song. I also really liked The Unveiling, the first song. Aetheric. Cancel Walls and Sakes was really good. And the thing is, I was listening through it and I thought, oh, Lightbringer, that was a song that I liked, wasn't it? And I put it on and I thought, hang on, am I thinking of Aetheric? And then I went and listened to that and thought, wait a minute.
So there it is.
And I think that sums it up a little bit for me, is that they're all pretty fucking good. Interdimensional Summit is great, but ultimately I feel like apart from that song, the album blends into one in what I would say is a negative way.
Really?
Given the potential of the sound that's expressed in Interdimensional Summit, I think they could have taken a bit more of a gamble with some of the songs and, had something fast and a bit more choppy, had something really much more epic, thrown in maybe one that was like all acoustic or something like that. I feel like, just, do something a little bit different.
Yeah, do you know what? I won't...
When your sound is that good,
That's 100%. I haven't really got much more to add to that because I really think you've hit the nail on the head for me as well. I loved Interdimensional Summit. I loved Council of Wolves and Snakes. I'll probably pick those two songs out and chuck them on some playlists, but I probably won't be listening to the album all the way through because, exactly what you said. I feel like they could have taken more risks.
As much as I liked it, I am finding myself agreeing with you guys. Like, I really loved Interdimensional Summit and I really loved Etheric, but they're going to go on my playlist.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'll necessarily have Lightbringer on there.
You know what? It's not a huge criticism, right? They picked a thing, they executed it perfectly. It's great, but when you have something like that, you just pick out a couple of standout tracks and then
exactly. It's not even a criticism in a way. It's like they've done this thing really well, and those two songs, the couple songs you all picked out, they've all been excellent. And then
we're talking about 10 out of 10 tracks, right? Like 10 out of 10.
Yeah, and then the rest is like an 8 out of 10. But if you got a 10 out of 10, why would you listen to the 8 out of 10?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's bad.
And I'm sure that old school Dimmu Borgir fans, people who have been into it for years, I'm sure that they will seriously enjoy this album and probably be able to tell you all the lyrics to every song. But I think if you're coming into this like we are, I would have liked something a bit more different in there.
That's fair.
But all in all, a good fucking listen as well.
Absolutely.
100%.
Highly recommended.
So that was Darkthrone's A Blaze in the Northern Sky, Onirism's The Well of Stars, and Dimmu Borgir's Eonian.
Yeah, some really great albums there. I love black metal, and we've said this a couple of times, but this hopefully will be the first of many black metal albums that we cover.
Definitely
on this show, and
sure.
I'm hoping that in a future series we can do another black metal episode because I'd love to show you guys some of the bands that I'm into at the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean I'd love to go and do some a whole episode on early black metal. I'd love to do a whole episode on, what's out there right now and go more into sort of Dimmu Borgir and things like that. There's just so much within one genre. There's so much. Yeah,
it's such a huge genre. I think even beyond even beyond like generic genres, like well, not generic, but like more like widespread genre, like metalcore, for example, which have kind of become everything. Like black metal's really spread out, and it's now in things that aren't even metal anymore. You know? It's influenced synth and ambient and like you're saying with the synthwave, like 80s throwback, like darkwave synth.
Yeah, on that, can I just make a quick recommendation on that, because Perturbator and Irving Force are two fantastic artists in that area, and I'm definitely going to bring one of those to a future episode.
It's a diverse genre. If we were going to do an episode on stoner metal, I feel like we could pick 3 bands that are quite good representations.
Certainly do a much better job than we did today.
Yeah, definitely.
No,
I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, it's really opened my eyes. It really has. I said at the start of the episode, coming into this, I thought we were going to be talking about basically 3 Darkthrone albums.
Yeah. Black metal is the genre that I'm listening to the most at the moment and getting the most out of. So I could talk about this for hours and days, but we didn't even have the opportunity here because there's just so much variation in a genre which to most people just sounds like fucking noise.
I would like to get some recommendations. So on that note, maybe we should just move on to talk about what we're going to be covering next week. I'll be bringing Boss Keloid's album, Melted on the Inch. Probably
very nice.
One of my, I'm not even going to say top 10, I reckon top 3 albums of all time. I absolutely love this album, and I cannot wait to gush about it for as much time as you guys will let me. But how about you, Josh? What are we talking about next week?
I'm bringing a controversial pick, possibly. Ascendancy by Trivium.
I'm interested to listen to this one because I feel like I am biased against Trivium, and I don't know why, because realistically, I've barely listened to their music.
Interesting.
Seriously, Trivium get a lot of hate.
Oh, really?
I don't think they deserve it.
Okay.
Especially their earlier stuff, I think, was pretty solid.
Cool.
Well, I'm open-minded. I'm going into this hoping that I can... The thing is, if I get into Trivium, then maybe I can go see a Trivium show and that's just another gig. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how about you, Tom? What are you bringing for us?
I'm bringing an album that I'm listening to all the fucking time at the moment. It's an album called Zeszek ni nami na mas pomysłu by a band called Gruzia.
That was very good, I think.
I'm very excited about it.
How long did you spend practicing that?
Oh, days.
I think you've linked this to me pretty much every single day for the last fortnight. So, yeah.
I've linked it to just about everyone I know. So,
I can tell you're into
excited to talk about it.
Yeah, cool.
I've gotten no links from you, Tom. I'm very offended.
Are you
It's
sure?
in the group chat, Josh.
Josh, we've spoken about this before.
Have we? I probably was like, don't send me any more of this shit.
Fuck you.
Well, it's part of a sort of growing Polish new wave, including bands like Biesi and Odrasa, which are absolutely brilliant as well. So I'm ready to fucking gush about it because I love it.
I'm excited for next week. I think there's a 3 really interesting choices. I think a bit of
it's
variation
gonna be
there,
great.
but yeah, I'm excited.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's gonna
Let's
be a good
fucking do it. Yeah.
So that was episode 4 of the Metal Face podcast, our first genre-specific episode on black metal. I'm sure we'll be making a return to it pretty soon. It sounds like next week. I hope.
Yeah.
I hope everyone enjoyed. We'll talk to you all next week.
We'll see you again real soon.
Bye.
Very much.
Bye.
Bye.
That was the Metal Face podcast. Go follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for Season and Mist, Carrick Anger, and Separation for their music in the intro. And thank you to Johnny Peterson for transition music throughout. Go check out his projects at Heads for the Dead, Massacre, Wormvale, and Wombath. And most importantly, thank you for listening. Take it easy, and hail Satan. Alrighty then. Let's do the onion.
Dimmu Onion.
Dimmu Burger Onion.
Dimmu
Dimmu Borgir and their album, The Onion.
Okay, we cannot include this in the show because it's not good.
Are we being racist?
Right.
Well, it's not racist to say onion.
But what accidentally parody?
Wait, this week on Hot Take Podcast. He's saying this onion.
It's fine to say onion. It's how the French say onion.
Oh, is the
No,
French?
it's
That's
not.
fine.
Probably.
Right, okay. So my choice this week is Eonian by Norwegian symphonic black metal giants Dimmu Borgir. It's their 10th studio album and was birthed into this world pretty recently in 2018. Dimmu Borgir...
recently, wow.
Yeah, it's very, very, well, a very new, 3 years old now, whatever. I think Dimmu Borgir are really at the
Sorry,
heart
Ben,
of...
I fucked that up. I think we should cut that and
Okay,
start
that's
again.
So my choice is... And now I'm going to have to say Eonian again, and I hate saying it. Okay. You're not helping.
Sorry.
So my choice this week is Eonian. For fuck's